Ladies and gentlemen, please take your seats. Our program is about to begin.
I'm Harvey Eisner, with one more reason to attend Firehouse Expo in Baltimore this year.
Hey! Firehouse Expo's having a free Harley-Davidson giveaway. Yep, it's me again. And I tell you what, Harvey looks way too cool there on that bike. I'm not going to step on him for this one.
Everyone knows I like to let my hair down. And what better way to let your hair down than riding on a new 2013 Harley-Davidson motorcycle. This year, one lucky attendee at Firehouse Expo will go home with a beautiful American-made motorcycle just for attending this year's show. Who else is giving you a free motorcycle as a thank you for all of your support? All you need to do is fill out an entry form at the Firehouse booth, but you do need to be there on Saturday afternoon for the drawing to win. For complete rules and regulations, go to the Firehouse Expo website. Just one more reason you don't want to miss this year's Firehouse Expo. More tradition, more education, and more fun. I'm Harvey Eisner, with one more reason to attend Firehouse Expo in Baltimore this year on Saturday afternoon for the drawing to win. For complete rules.
Ladies and gentlemen, welcome to Firehouse Expo 2013. Please give a warm welcome to the Fire Brigade Pipes and Drums of Greater Baltimore and the Baltimore City Fire Department Honor Guard.
Ladies and gentlemen, becoming a firefighter takes a level of courage, commitment, and dedication that most people do not possess. Firefighters charge into dangerous situations that others are forced to flee. On June 30th, 19 courageous souls were lost as the men of the Granite Mountain Hotshots from Station 7 out of Prescott battled the Yarnell Hill Fire. This elite group was among the best of the best firefighters in Arizona and the nation. These brave men gave their lives protecting their community. We mourn their loss and grieve for the friends and family that they leave behind. Some were lucky enough to call these men friend, brother, son, and father. But for us, they will forever be known as heroes. At this time, the Arizona Diamondbacks and Colorado Rockies ask that you join us for a 19-second moment of silence in honor of these 19 fallen heroes. Thank you. Ladies and gentlemen, the Arizona Diamondbacks and the Colorado Rockies invite you to join in the singing of the Star-Spangled Banner, performed by Petty Officer Stephen Powell of the U.S. Navy.
Oh, say, can you see by the dawn's early light what so proudly we'd hailed at the twilight last gleaming, whose broad stripes and bright stars through the perilous fight o'er the ramparts we'd watched were so gallantly streaming, and the rockets red glare, the bombs bursting in air, gave proof through the night that our flag was still there. Oh, say does that star-spangled banner yet wave o'er the land and of the free and the home of the brave.
Ladies and gentlemen, Petty Officer Stephen Powell.
Please welcome Chaplain Commander Father Walter Burgess for today's invocation.
This morning, I give thanks to the Lord for all the emergency personnel that I have had the opportunity to meet. People from France, Ireland, India, our neighbors to the north, our Canadian brothers and sisters, and the states where I have visited firehouses and met so many dedicated professionals. Thanks to Almighty God for all who have traveled here to our city, Baltimore, in safety, for this Firehouse Expo, for Harvey and his staff, and thanks for all who are here to teach and share, and for the participants who are here to learn. We pray also for the vendors who provide us with the latest tools and knowledge of our profession. Lord God, we ask you to bless this nation, our President Barack, and all the legislators who govern, that they may make wise decisions and right actions to provide safety to those whom they are elected to serve. Almighty God, we give thanks and pray for those who have made the supreme sacrifice. We ask your blessing upon those they have left behind and whom we continue to remember and pray for. O God, the protector of all who hope in you, without whom nothing is strong, nothing is holy. Increase and multiply us in your mercy and grace, that we may all grow in our chosen vocations to serve and to protect. Supreme Architect of the universe, we invoke your blessing at this time. May this Fire Expo be conducted in peace and keep safe all as they travel home, that the world may live in harmony. And finally, may God's blessing be upon you and the first responders of our cities, states, and nations, now and forevermore. Amen. Join me as we say the Pledge of Allegiance to the flag of our country. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation under God, indivisible, with with liberty and justice for all.
Ladies and gentlemen, please remain standing for the retirement of the colors.
Pipes and drums, I hear command. Pipes and drums, America. Fire the right, quick, mark.
Please welcome Harvey Eisner, Firehouse Expo Program Director and Editor-in-Chief of Firehouse Magazine.
Morning. First of all, I'd like to thank the Baltimore City Color Guard and Bagpipe Band. Let's just give them another ovation. Welcome to this year's Firehouse Expo. Next year will be the 30th anniversary. Hard to believe we started here in 1984. First of all, I'd like to thank the Arizona Diamondbacks, the Colorado Rockies, Major League Baseball, and the Phoenix Fire Department for all their part in getting permission and assistance in allowing us to use that video of the tribute to the 19 firefighters. The Expo staff, I'd like to thank Firehouse Magazine, Firehouse.com, for all their assistance in putting on this presentation over the next few days. I'd like to thank Fireline Video every year for their opening shots and from all around the country. There's many times that we ask for people to take surveys, what you like, what you don't like, what you like to see. If you participate in those surveys or questionnaires that we send out from time to time, it helps us make a better show. So please do what you can to help us make a better show for you next year. I just wanted to acknowledge before we call our first speaker, many of our speakers have been with us from the beginning. They started their careers teaching and writing for us and doing books and working around the country. This year, I don't know if they're in the room, but I just would like to acknowledge and give them an ovation. Many people have retired over the last year, and I'd just like to acknowledge their commitment to us for all the teaching that they've had, the education that they've provided to thousands and thousands of firefighters who attend this show each year. They are John Salker, Mike Dugan, Robert Morris, who just retired recently with 40 years of service, who does our forcible entry and now specialized heavy rescue class, and Mike Wilbur. So please, let's acknowledge them. At this time, it gives me great pleasure to bring up a friend of mine and a friend of Firehouse and Firehouse Expo. Ron Sarnecki is the Executive Director of the National Fallen Firefighters Foundation. It's a tough job every day with the number of line-of-duty deaths that we incur each year, and in the last few months with West Texas, other incidents in Texas, and the Prescott, Arizona incident where the 19 hotshots were lost. It just adds a great burden to the terrific job that they do each and every day. And to just talk about what they're up against right now and what they have to continue to do every day for the firefighters, the families, and the fire departments that have been affected recently in such great numbers. Let's welcome Ron Sarnecki, Executive Director of the National Fallen Firefighters.
Well, good morning. And first of all, let me bring greetings from the National Fallen Firefighters Foundation Board of Directors and our chairman, Chief Denny Compton, who's sitting over there up front with me. It's a pleasure to have been asked to present today. Harvey, I do appreciate the opportunity to talk about the foundation. Many of you have heard us talk about the National Fallen Firefighters Foundation, a variety of different events and activities. And so we appreciate the opportunity to be here this morning. You know, 2013 is really going to be a bad year for the fire service. I think everybody that's been following what's been happening across the country knows that. We've had a lot of firefighter fatalities and, of course, a lot of multiple deaths. If you're not following the numbers, with the line of duty death that was reported yesterday, we are now at 79 reported deaths for the year so far. And if you weren't following the numbers at all, last year we had a total of 73 for the entire calendar year of 2012. So these have been some pretty horrific events. There's been a lot of work put into helping the departments, helping the families of the fallen firefighters, and that's really why the United States Congress created the National Fallen Firefighters Foundation, to honor our brothers and sisters who died in the line of duty, to help their families rebuild their lives, and do what we can to support the long-term recovery of the departments and the families themselves. And so as we watched the videos today, the tribute from Arizona was phenomenal. The foundation was out working with all of the organizations that were out there. There was a large conglomerate of people helping in Prescott. We were out in West. That's a whole separate tragedy to occur there. not only do you have all of the firefighters that died and the apparatus that was gone, but you had blocks and blocks of communities just leveled. Houses that are now being bulldozed and people are still living in motels and with friends and family. But the piece that Harvey asked me to talk about was, what's the foundation doing? And the first thing that happens when there's a line of duty death is that we alert our local assistance state team, which is a program funded by the Department of Justice to have response personnel in every state to immediately go in and help those departments, if they wish to be helped, to put together a plan of action of where they're going to go from there. And that would include helping with memorial services, helping with the funerals, all of the activities related to supporting the families and the coworkers, behavioral health support, and really helping them put a long-term plan in place for what they're going to do after the loss of their firefighter. And that isn't just for the West Texas or Bryant, Texas, or Prescott, Arizona. We do that each and every day for every single individual firefighter along with the multiples. But what that does is it takes a lot of time and a lot of resources. And we're very fortunate the fire service helps us deliver that messaging and that service and that program to those departments and those families. Our biggest piece is to try and make sure that those families begin to put their lives back together and try to return to some level of normalcy, whatever that might be. And we do try to help with the public safety officer benefits claim to try and get that federal death benefit paid. And most of all, what we try to do is help coordinate a recovery effort. And there's a lot of work that goes into that. We actually, to use West as an example, actually opened up an office in West and staffed it from the day after the explosion until just last Friday, when we finally were able to close down and work out that exit strategy of turning over the support mechanisms to the town of West and to the Texas Fire Chiefs Association and others who are helping us. So there's a lot that goes into this, a lot of things that happen behind the scenes, a lot of things that you may not even know we're doing. But the piece is that what we all have to do is be ever vigilant about the dangers that are in our business, understanding that we need to stay at the top of our game. That's the reason that the foundation started with the Everyone Goes Home program and trying to reduce line of duty deaths and injuries. And so what I would close with today is just to let you know that the foundation is there providing support and assistance. We do the National Memorial each October to kick off Fire Prevention Week in our country in Emmitsburg at the National Emergency Training Center, the home of the National Fire Academy. And good to see our friends from Emmitsburg here today. But the most important thing is that we, the foundation, will be there whether it's a single firefighter death or a multiple firefighter death for as long as those families and those departments need us. And to do that, it does take resources. And so I would encourage you to participate in some of our activities. Stair Climb on Saturday goes to support families from 9/11. But most of all, become an educated consumer as to what the foundation can do to help our brothers and sisters when they're in need. And I would suggest the best way to do that is to visit our website at www.firehero.org or talk to any of us at the foundation. Harvey, thank you for the time this morning. I appreciate it. And all of you, please be safe.
We thank Ron for his efforts, and because of that and his continued leadership with that organization, he was awarded the top award that the Congressional Fire Service Institute can bestow on a person. So Dennis Compton is also a recipient of that, the chairman of the foundation, and Ron received that award this year. So congratulations from all of us.
Thank you. Thanks, Harvey. Thank you.
At this time, I'd like to call up Dr. Dennis O'Neill, Superintendent of the National Fire Academy. He's held that position since 1995. I knew him when he was I first met him as a lieutenant, going way, way back in New Jersey, and he reminded me to tell everybody that he served all of his years as an officer in the street. So to give us some insight into what the National Fire Academy is doing and what it means with all these recent major fire fatalities, Dr. Dennis O'Neill.
thank you, Harvey, for that kind introduction, and thank you for inviting me. I also want to commend the Firehouse staff for just putting together a great show again this year. As Harvey pointed out, he and I go back to the days before Firehouse magazine. He was a fire photographer from Tenafly, New Jersey, and I was on the ladder company in Jersey City, and it's been a great friendship for 40 years. And Harvey, I have to tell you, I didn't know that you were a Harley kind of guy. You look great on that bike. I bring you greetings from Homeland Security Secretary Janet Napolitano, FEMA Administrator Craig Fugate, Fire Administrator Chief Ernie Mitchell, Deputy Fire Administrator Chief Glenn Gaines, and all the men and women of the United States Fire Administration, and welcome you to Fire Expo 2013. This is a learning opportunity of a lifetime. Where else can you assemble the top fire service educators from around the country in strategy and tactics, in safety and management, in leadership? It's all here. It's all under one roof. You know, in the last 3 months, as Ron Sarnicki and Denny Compton so well know, we've lost 19 firefighters in Yarnell, Arizona, 12 in West Texas, and 4 in Houston. And that's just in a period of 3 months. And something has to change. And that change begins this morning. It begins with your support of the National Fallen Firefighter Foundation and their activities here at the conference. It begins with the training that you have, opportunities that you're going to have this morning. And it's going to be with the continued education and training that you pursue when you go back to your departments. These people here today, these people here this week, are here for one reason and for one reason only: to give you the benefit of their experience, their preparation, their training, their education. And they're here for your benefit, and I encourage you to take advantage of it. Look who's here: Dr. Bob Fleming, Dr. Lori Moore, Dr. Rich Gassaway, Dr. Bill Genoway, Dr. Harry Carter. The FD&Y is very well represented by Chiefs Bob Maines, John Norman, John Salka, Teddy Goldfarb, Captain Mike Wilbur, Lieutenant Rob Brown, and Mickey Comboy. You have some very, very great special topic presentations from Chief Denny Compton and Ron Sarnicki, John Rukavina, Bobby Cobb from the ISO, and Kurt Verone. Ben May, who works at Disney World down in Orlando, will be talking about branding your department. Dan Madrikowski and Bill Troop will be talking about some exciting research going on in the federal government about firefighter safety and health. And if you're looking for the best in leadership and strategy speakers, don't miss Chiefs Ron Kahneman, Mike Turpak from my own department in Jersey City, Ron Moore, and Larry Curl. And there's a special presentation I'd recommend that you see, and that's being given by Chief Adam Thiel, Chief Dave Rohr, and Chief Richie Barrows on high-rise research that's going on in cooperation with the IAFF and NIST. And of course, don't miss Billy Goldfeder, who's another guy I go back about 40 years with. And Billy's going to be talking down on the conference floor. And there are many, many other great instructors here to try to help you understand what the challenges are, what the dangers are, and how to overcome them. Things have to change. You have a choice today, this week. You can learn from these people, or you can learn the hard way. You see, they've already paid the tuition at the School of Hard Knocks, and they're willing to share that information with you. It's a pretty inexpensive way to learn. It's better than you paying the tuition for that education. So take notes. Engage in active learning and ask questions. Bring these lessons back to the men and women that you work with in your departments back home, because it's all about training, it's all about preparation, it's all about understanding. Sign up for courses at the National Fire Academy. There are great courses available through your state training systems in every one of your states, and of course there are some great local, county, and department training as well. I encourage you to do that. As Ron Sarnicki said this morning, tremendous losses this year. It's great being back. It's great having you back. And on behalf of all the men and women of the United States Fire Administration, to our home state of Maryland, and wish you success during this convention. Thank you.
At this time, I'd like to acknowledge our Heroism and Community Service Awards winner for this year's contest. Our 2012 Grand Prize winner is ex-Chief John Curley from Belmont, New York Fire Department, Engine Company Number 2. I'm going to read his act of courage. On November 12, 2012, at 7:40 a.m., ex-Chief John Curley and his son were in a fire department pickup when a report of a house fire, possibly with people trapped, was announced. Curley was the first to arrive. A 2-story high ranch-style home had heavy fire from front to rear on the exposure 4 or delta side. As Curley approached the scene, there was screaming coming from the other side of the street. He asked if everybody was out and was told a mother was still inside. The 61-year-old son, covered in soot, was trying to place a 6-foot ladder on top of the 5.5-foot tall file cabinet. Curley was told him to hold the cabinet while he jumped on top of it and placed the ladder against an air conditioner under the bedroom window. He climbed up the ladder, ripped out the screen, and broke several panes in the window, in the process burning his fingers. Heavy black smoke began to vent. Curley could not see the bed and reached in. The sheets moved freely. Curley thought she might be on the floor. Fire had already burned to the top 2 feet of the bedroom door. He could make out what appeared to be legs lying on the floor. Curley climbed over the air conditioning unit and crawled to the unconscious 92-year-old woman. He lifted her up and carried her to the bed, then to the window for some air. He yelled to his son and an arriving chief that he was going to need help. Curley lifted her halfway out the window on top of the air conditioning unit. Fire was rolling across the ceiling and his ears and head were starting to burn. He chose to climb over the woman and back onto the ladder. His son, chief, and 2 Nassau County police officers were holding the file cabinet and legs of the ladder, which began to slide. The woman survived with serious injuries. At this time, I'd like to call up ex-Chief John Curley from Baldwin and also Robert Dawes, St. Louis firefighter and sculptor, owner of Liberty Artworks, that will make a presentation.
On behalf of Liberty Artworks and myself, we are truly honored to be part of this program. Well done, Chief. Thank you.
Our first keynote speaker I'd like to introduce is Robert Maines, Deputy Assistant Chief, Chief of Planning and Strategy, FDNY. Chief Maines is a 33-year veteran, first responder, currently serves on the FDNY as its Queensborough commander, and was in this position during Superstorm Sandy. As a staff chief, he serves as a citywide incident commander on a rotating schedule. Currently, as a collateral assignment, he serves as the incident commander on the FDNY Incident Management Team. Additionally, he possesses national qualifications as an operations section chief, liaison officer, and safety officer. He served for 2 years on the National Type 1 Incident Management Team based in the Southwest. Maines is deployed nationally to 15 incidents, including the FDNY Incident Management Team response to New Orleans following Hurricane Katrina. Chief Maines has a BA from Stony Brook University. At this time, he's going to give us a brief overview of Hurricane Sandy, and he's going to continue his presentation in the next session after the opening ceremonies. Let's give a warm welcome to Chief Maines.
Thank you. Good morning. It's an honor to be here. I sat in the front row there next to Mickey Conboy and listened to Ron from the National Fallen Firefighters Foundation. I just want to give him a plug before I start. My son is a hotshot, or he was a hotshot for 3 years. He actually was being recruited on the Prescott Hotshots this year, and he took a different job in Colorado. But I saw the work cooperatively between the NFFF, the IAFF, the wildland community, and the structural community come together to try and support the memorial, which you all saw, but probably more importantly, 19 funerals and memorials the next 96 hours with no financial support to the folks that were doing it. So everybody was kind of there on a volunteer. So I can't say again how important and how profound that NFFF was to the people of Prescott. I'm going to go into my presentation on Sandy. This is going to be a talk about operations in the borough of Queens only. In New York City alone, similar operations happen in Staten Island, Brooklyn, the lower half of Manhattan. So 4 of our 5 boroughs were significantly impacted, and operations and challenges were similar. And as you looked out, you saw some photos from, or some film from Long Island. So most of Nassau County on the South Shore was dealing with the same challenges. And then a big portion of New Jersey also dealing with all the same challenges. And hopefully we're going to get some sound in a minute.
It's like a scene out of some end of the world movie.
So how did Sandy happen? How did the northeast part of the U.S. get so impacted? October 22nd, Hurricane Sandy started forming in the Caribbean, started moving south. By the 24th, it became a hurricane, leaving destruction in its path, and hit the U.S., immediately impacting 24 states. And on the 29th, Sandy struck New Jersey, impacting a big part of New Jersey, most of New York City, and most of Long Island. And how did this happen? How did it turn the wrong way? Because if you're not from the Northeast, and I know most of the audience is, we don't consider ourselves vulnerable this late in the season. We look more around Labor Day as our target time when our water is the warmest. But Sandy came along more than halfway through the hurricane season. What we're looking at here is a storm track of Sandy as it came up. And 2 other issues impacted the Northeast. Normally a storm like this turns and goes out into the Atlantic Ocean. However, there was an Arctic ridge coming off Greenland and a cold front coming down from Canada. Whenever it tried to turn out, the Arctic ridge pushed it back. The cold front then gave the hurricane energy and pulled it in. As you see there, the hurricane just made a 90-degree turn and turned in and struck as a superstorm in New Jersey. What did that mean to New York? Well, as you look at New York City, we are in the right angle to the Atlantic Ocean. The worst case scenario for us is the eye of a hurricane striking someplace in New Jersey with us to the east. So hurricanes have numerous things that impact how bad or severe the storm surge will be. One thing is the location of the eye of the storm, and this eye hit in the worst place for northern New Jersey and New York City into New Jersey, with New York City to the east. East side of the eye is always the worst with a surge. West side usually gets a little more rain. east side gets more surge and a wind, and that's what we dealt with. Worst time for the storm to hit is at high tide, and we'll look in a few minutes. Sandy struck us at 1904 hours, and high tide was about 2000 hours. So worst case scenario, the storm rushing in with the high tide. Also came at a full moon, which severely impacts the surge. The only place we got a little bit of a break was October 29th. As compared to Irene the year before, the water temperatures off Rockaway were 11 degrees cooler than they are now, than they were on the 29th. And water temperature significantly impacts the surge. What we dealt with was a 14-foot surge in Rockaway. And what a 14-foot surge means is if you were to put a column plumb at the high water mark, 14 foot high, and shoot a laser, that's where the water is going to reach. If, and this is a big if in a worst case scenario, if we had all those same conditions we had in Sandy had struck with the water temperatures during Irene, we would have had a 20-foot surge or a 22-foot surge, depending on who you ask. So wherever that water went, add 6 feet to it. And I know a lot of people in the room were impacted by that. But informal research done in the Queens Borough Command, we came up with as many as 5,000 deaths in Queens alone. Because everybody you heard about who had water up to their chest would have had water over their head. So how did we operate here, and how were we considered successful? I'm going to talk a little about those different parts, but preparedness was a big part. How did we strategically prepare for Sandy? And back in 2001, the McKinsey report was published, and it came out with a number of recommendations. And one of those recommendations was we should create an incident management team, similar to the team that came to New York and supported us during the World Trade Center, with a specialization in urban disaster and urban terrorism. Ironically enough, Dennis O'Neill, who spoke before, was a big part of that team becoming embedded and assisting us in New York. So we created that team. Another recommendation is that New York City has to be able to operate their boroughs independently, because we found out in 2001 that we were on the verge of being unable to support the 5 boroughs. So we came up with a concept that each borough should have a borough commander and be empowered to support that borough if we have another disaster. I think the focus then was terrorism, but it worked equally well in Sandy. And then we talk about our Special Operations Command. Numerous things were recommended in our Special Operations Command, and those were one of the stars that supported us. Just alone, the Swiftwater improvements since 2001, there were 7 Swiftwater teams deployed throughout the city, 3 of them in the borough of Queens. We can't count how many rescues they made. I witnessed them rescue hundreds of folks. All of those people were vulnerable, and our Special Operations Command was able to rise to the challenge and perform rescues in surging, rapidly flowing cold water and pull the people to safety. We'll talk a little bit about our preparation for Sandy, which is more of a tactical focus. And then our storm operations in Queens, where we dealt with 5 catastrophic fires at the same time, 4 of them in the surge, 1 outside just being impacted by the wind. And then in my next session, I'll go into how we did the post-storm operation. But we were hit with the challenge of 948 FDNY individuals either losing their home or coming close to losing their home. 381 of them worked, 381 lived in Queens, and 230 of them worked in Queens. Hurricane Katrina, our incident management team and our search and rescue task force got valuable experience down there supporting New Orleans fire, and for our search and rescue team, the state of Mississippi. We were able to go to school on New Orleans and learn lessons, because even though New Orleans was impacted really by an engineering failure as the levees let go and the city flooded, the impact was the same. Hurricane Noreen, this is an interesting hurricane. When someone put this together for me, were killing themselves trying to find out where is Hurricane Noreen. I can't find it. And that's Hurricane Noreen. That's Mrs. Maines. She's a Category 5 hurricane. But back in 2006, when we came back from Katrina, we were empowered, the incident management team, with creating a simulation for Type 2 incident management teams to be used for qualification. And they said, why don't you do a hurricane impacting Rockaway? So we went and did Hurricane Noreen. 17 agencies used it the first time. It's been used numerous other times. But the research we used in creating that simulation was put to test 6 years later. And if you were to read just the initial attack incident commander report, the fictional one, it reads just like what happened in Queens 6 years later, with the dates being off. In 2008, our team went to Hurricane Gustav and supported the state of Louisiana. In 2010, Queens was struck with a tornado, which had our chief of department, Ed Kilduff, making some changes to how we did business when we have an incident that taxes your on-duty resources. And I'll talk a little later about the success we had there. And then Hurricane Irene in 2011. New York City got very lucky in that. 48 hours out, we were hitting trigger points that was looking at a storm worse than Sandy, and we got a break. However, we did in New York City a mandatory evacuation. When that was put in place again in October, I fear that the residents of New York City, Nassau, and New Jersey all felt the boy is crying wolf again. And that's why I came up with how significant that loss of life would have been if we just had a few more feet of water, because they did not evacuate for the most part. And then following Irene, Tropical Storm Lee came up and flooded the west side of the Catskills, and our swift water teams, our Special Operations Command, and our incident management team went up to Binghamton and got valuable experience managing a flood. So there's the right angle I talked a little bit about. You look at the bottom there, that peninsula is Rockaway. If you look where that pink meets the yellow, that's Nassau County meeting Rockaway, Kennedy Airport above it. That's Kennedy Airport on October 30th. During 1938, Kennedy, which was then Idlewild, went under 20 feet of water, so they seemed to be a little prepared. We had a relocation plan in Queens that we formed because of Hurricane Noreen, where we said, where are we going to move our companies if a storm like this is coming? And we came up with two places. Once was over the Marine Parkway Bridge into Brooklyn and up out of the surge water, but then in Far Rockaway, where we knew the firehouse was significantly above the predicted surge level. We even sent in the Borough Command a firefighter down with a GPS and marked that we were 38 feet above sea level, so we were safe. So we made that a staging area and moved our units there. We added additional units. Battalion 7-4 was the 2nd Battalion for the Rockaway Peninsula. 3 extra engines, an extra ladder. A brush fire unit, which was looked at that could go through high water, and that supported our EMS resources to go in and perform pre-hospital medical care. We lost that unit. It still hasn't been replaced under 8 feet of surge water. We lost the sand vehicle. And 3 swift water units for Queens alone. Swift water unit was 2 Zodiacs, a SOC officer, and 4 SOC swift water trained firefighters to perform rescues. We also put in a Carolina skiff from our Marine unit with similar capabilities, and then our chainsaw task forces would follow the storm. We did the relocation in 1,800 hours. The surge came at 1,904 hours. We knew we'd have to some rescue from the surge. We knew we'd have some fire suppression. We didn't know the depth of the fire rescues that would take place.
Department Assistant Chief Bob Maines walked us through what's left on just this street, Beach 130.
Well, this is a firefighter's home.
Dozens of homes were destroyed, But there were just as many heroes.
I went on 130th Street and did it again.
Among them, the impossibly humble Ron Kassar of Engine 265.
You got a hydrant?
He dove under the rising water to find a hydrant and attach a hose.
Don't feel as if maybe you did something extraordinary?
Nothing more than my other members of my company would do.
Across town, Tommy Fee from Squad 270 in Queens was working with Swiftwater Team 6 when they got a call. People trapped.
We gotta work with what we got.
When they got there, it wasn't just flooding, but fire. A river of water between them. Fee had to swim, then climb a building to get to those trapped.
4-7 to Chief Maine. Is there a possibility of getting a tower ladder down here?
Amid 70-mile-an-hour winds, whipping flames, and rising water, Fee brought survivors across rooftops, through an open window, and out onto a rescue boat. Back on 130, it was quick thinking that saved the home of retired firefighter Charlie Moran and his wife Nancy, lifelong Rockaway residents.
I had 29 years in the fire department. I worked in Harlem, Brownsville, Lower East Side. I went to a lot of fires. But when it's personal, well, you know, it's tough.
And for these guys, it's family.
I remember Charlie schooling me and his brother Walter, taking me out one night and explaining what to do and what not to do.
Despite the damage, Charlie and Nancy say this town is tougher than it looks, and they will rebuild.
Now you owe me a beer one night on your porch.
It's a place too rich in tradition, friendship, and family to keep them away. Katie Turr, NBC News, New York.
So that's an overview of Beach 114th Street. Murphy's Law, we did a relocation at 1800 hours. 2 blocks to the left or to the west, ladder 137 went out of service at 1700 hours. They were trying to get them a spare apparatus. At 1800, they were supposed to relocate, and they started to move all their equipment onto engine 268, the engine and quarters with them. They didn't realize the water was coming in. They left quarters, started heading for Far Rockaway for the staging area, made a left and ran into this fire. They started to suppress the fire. As the surge water came in, the water went 8 or 9 feet over the apparatus. The apparatus stalled, and they were there with an engine company, with the personnel from a ladder company and an engine company, and they weren't able to pump water, and they were watching a building burn. That fire started moving from east to west, and now they were faced with rescuing trapped people. Folks weren't able to get out of the house the way they normally would, because the water was well above their main entrance. And Tommy Fee, who you saw before, with a Swiftwater team, came in to support these folks. And we think they rescued over 50 people from the fire. There's no way of counting. They did things like taking doors off and putting them over roofs and using those as escape ways from roof to roof. They went to an awning, a commercial awning, and they cut footholds in it to step up on that to reach up and reach a fire escape to then pull people out and then move them out of the water. The film you were actually just watching was on Beach 130th Street, separate fire 16 blocks away. If you look towards the bottom of your screen, that's where the fire started, or now on your right. It then proceeded from the ocean towards the bay, and it started heading to take out every house in its way. The bigger building on that cross street is the Harbor Light, which we'll see pictures of in a little bit, owned by a retired firefighter. The foundation of Belle Harbor, we lost that completely. Those 2 chiefs you saw earlier decided to make a stop in the middle of that block where you saw that damage. Very similar to a wildland fire, only we had water. And they were able to flank the fire, bring lines in through backyards, and then move on and stop the fire at, interestingly enough, right before Charlie Moran's house, a retired captain who lost his nephew at the World Trade Center, serving then in the Special Rescue Battalion in the Special Operations Command. This was the second fire. We were aware of this. We were in our relocated area. Contrary to reports that we got earlier that the water would come in and go out fast, it didn't do that. It came in at 1904 hours. At 0300, 7 hours later, low tide, there was still 4 feet of water in most of the Rockaways. that was a point we were able to move our apparatus in and start fighting the fires when the water got down to about 4 feet. Breezy Point was the third significant fire in Rockaway. We're going to get to that in a minute. For some reason, we were able to get to Breezy Point first as we came over from Brooklyn. The water just went out a little sooner there, and I'm told the reason for that is that there's so much beach at Breezy Point, it was able to take the water out. At Beach 130th Street and Beach 114th Street, the beach is very small, so it kind of held the water in place. That's the direction the fire moved in. It's looking from the ocean, looking up. And then I just like this picture because it shows what our challenges were going to be in the future. Every 19,000 basements look just like that burnt out basement did. Basements were full of water up to the first floor or above. And this was going on in 4 of our boroughs, Nassau County, part of Suffolk County, and I don't know how many counties and towns in New Jersey. Also in Bell Harbor, show this picture here, a block and a half away is where Flight 587 crashed in November of 2001. An inordinate or a very high number of residents from this area also lost their lives at the World Trade Center. From there, we move over to Breezy Point. I'm only going to play this briefly because I want to stay in time, but I'll do this in detail in my breakout session. But that's Breezy Point. It's 111 houses destroyed by fire. We were able to use that parking lot on the north side finally as a flank.
Breezy Point during the hurricane. I know volunteers for well over an hour. We got like a third alarm going here.
This is a film that's done by a firefighter from Engine 248 using his iPhone. He lived on Irving Walk and he did lose his home. I'm going to move forward on this. I'll play that in detail in the next session. But then the real challenge in the takeaway from here is preparing for the worst. We took grant money and prepared for a disaster, and it was put to the test. When you do preparation, you have to prepare for the worst. People used to laugh or snicker when we said after Katrina that this could happen in New York. They didn't believe it. It happened on October 29th. So-called experts told us that when we said we did Hurricane Noreen, they said, how could you do a hurricane named Noreen? They said, it's the 14th storm of the season. New York wouldn't be vulnerable to the 14th storm of the season. I said, give me a break. It's my wife's name. I just named it after her so we could get it out there. We know we're vulnerable earlier in the season. And he was right. It took the 19th storm of the season to give the worst storm the Northeast ever had. What I'm going to work on in the next room is a little bit on how do you prepare for what we were facing. Streets full of sand, almost every house in 2 battalions full of water, trees down throughout the borough, boardwalks picked up and placed on houses, sometimes houses put up. So we did a very heavy dewatering operation. Does anybody tell what that's being used for, that pump? Dennis, did you know about this one?
Extremely emaciated, so
for the first time ever in November 2012, we get a whale.
Seems like it doesn't have a lot of energy.
Beaches itself in Breezy Point. And they tell us the challenge now is you have to say to keep the well alive, we got to keep it wet. Well, we had firefighters both on duty and numerous volunteers. And the borough of the Bronx is very well represented here in the front row over there. Well, their firefighters made them proud. Hundreds and hundreds of firefighters coming down and supporting the people in Breezy Point on the day off. What you saw there was probably some Bronx folks or maybe some Manhattan folks going down, keeping that whale alive, using one of our pumps. Unfortunately, the whale didn't make it. It was probably sick is why it beached itself. But I like to just point at that, at the resourcefulness of the fire service. and how they'll rise to the occasion. I'm going to cut it there. I had 20 minutes, and I did it in 21 and a half, Harvey. So thank you very much. Thank you.
I went out of order a little bit before, so at this time I'd like to introduce Chief Clack. He's retiring this week, Chief of the Baltimore City Fire Department, to give you some welcome comments. So Chief Siegel, Jeff Siegel is the new acting chief, so he's going to say a few remarks and welcome you to Baltimore.
Well, on behalf of Chief Clack and Baltimore City, we'd like to welcome the Firehouse Expo. And Baltimore City has a lot of tradition and a lot of history. And first of all, we want to make sure that you enjoy our city. And secondly, we want to make sure that we encourage you to do what we normally do. And every day we take a lot of pride. We have a patch on our uniform, very much and similar to the patches that everyone else has in the fire service. Our patch basically says pride protecting people. So we encourage you while you're in Baltimore and as you take in the Fire Expo, take pride in if you're here to learn as much as you can, and if you're here to teach, we encourage you to make sure you do the best job that you can. And it's very similar to what we have up here, the theme, making sure that you prepare for the future, honor tradition. And in the fire service, we have a very strong tradition. And we also, in the fire service, we are very progressive as well. So we encourage you as you learn, as you network, as you discuss, as you share stories, and as you share experiences, think about preparing for the future, and make sure that whatever you do, you go back home and you take those nuggets of education, those nuggets of thoughts, and improve your community, because we're all public servants and we take pride in protecting people. So again, we welcome you to Baltimore City, and on behalf of our mayor, Stephanie Rawlings Blake, we hope that you enjoy our city, and just as important again, just to reiterate, enjoy the Fire Expo. Thank you for being here in Baltimore.
Thank you, Chief. Before I bring up the final keynote speaker, I'm just going to make a few announcements. Tonight is the Brotherhood Bash, hosted by the Central Maryland Fools, Terry Farrell Foundation, Atlantic Emergency and Firehouse Expo, 6:30 p.m. to 12:30 a.m. There is a free shuttle to take you to and from the event in front of the Convention Center. Brotherhood Bash is a block party in a Little Italy with tents, gaming tables, music, food, and drinks. Tomorrow from 3 to 5 p.m. on the exhibit floor, there will be a tailgate on the show floor. This is hosted by Old Dominion, 10 Kate, and Firehouse Expo, with beverages and light snacks served with no charge. Free beer, free snacks. As Ron Sarnicki said, Saturday morning, please join the National Fallen Firefighter Foundation at the Hilton Hotel for the 3rd Annual National Fallen Firefighters Stair Climb. Registration opens at 8:30 a.m. Please join us in support of this great cause. For more information, go to the National Fallen Firefighters booth. And finally, on Saturday, as you saw me on the motorcycle there, that was great Hollywood work. We're giving away a free Harley-Davidson motorcycle. You need to be in attendance on the show floor to win the bike. After the show floor closes, we will direct everyone to the Inner Harbor for our Super Saturday event. Water rescue demonstration will take place by the Baltimore City Fire Department, a band playing live music, and food trucks. Unlimited beverage wristbands are being sold for $15 at our registration counter. And at this time, it gives me great pleasure to introduce Ryan Parrott. He's a former Navy SEAL, Sons of the Flag Foundation keynote speaker, and former Navy SEAL Ryan Parrott discusses some of his experiences while he served his country. He is all too familiar with the injuries the military suffers. The April tragedies in Boston, Massachusetts, and West Texas have brought national attention to victims of explosions. A group of burn survivors that Sons of the Flag Foundation has worked to help since its founding in 2012. The conflicts in Afghanistan and Iraq, and now these recent events involving explosions have reminded us again that severe burns are a significant portion of the injuries received in mass casualty incidents. These injuries are often devastating both physically and mentally. Years of burn research are woefully underfunded. There have been numerous technological advances that have proven to be effective, but these technologies are also underfunded. Last year, 450,000 people in the United States suffered burns, over 40,000 were hospitalized, 30,000 needed treatment at specialized burn hospitals. Listen to Ryan and his group work to advance treatment and technology and recruit more doctors to do work in the burn treatment field. Please give a warm welcome to Ryan Parrott.
Well, good morning. I can't hear you. Good morning. Everybody needs some coffee? I know I do. Well, first of all, I'd like to thank Mr. Eisner. Thank you so much for having us. We really, really appreciate it, you having us out here. We'd like to thank Fire Expo. This is a great organization. We'd love to thank every single one of you out here, what you do for our country. Please give yourself a round of applause for what you do for our country. I'll give you a little bit of my background, and then we're going to go into our mission and what we're fighting so hard for today. My name is Ryan Parrott. They call me Birdman. I'll explain it in a little bit. Not because my last name's Parrott, but it kind of makes sense. I grew up in Detroit, Michigan, and the interesting thing about me is I was failing every school and subject, every subject in school. In fact, my dad showed me a progress report not too long ago, and it had all F's on it. And it's kind of funny for me now. Obviously, then I was getting my butt kicked quite a bit. The interesting thing, though, is I just didn't have any motivation. And the one thing that I seek so desperately is to be on an elite team. I played ice hockey in Michigan. I played a lot of other sports, but I didn't try hard enough. It was one day that there was this teacher in school. He was a motivational psychology teacher named Tom Barnes. And teachers speak to all the kids every single day, but certain times they speak to individuals. This particular day, he spoke to me. He was a former Marine from Vietnam. And if you know anything about the Marine Corps, once a Marine, always a Marine. So he would run around the room every single day with his American flag. Marine Corps! Join the Marine Corps! This one particular day, I was failing his class, by the way. He said, there's only one thing better than the U.S. Marine Corps, and that's the United States Navy SEALs. I had turned my head and actually listened to him that day. And of course, he made it sound like we live on the moon and we breathe water, all that cool stuff. And I said, that's exactly what I want to do. Of course, I had no track record, no motivation whatsoever of wanting to be something like that. That wasn't enough, though. It was a friend of mine back in school who basically told me when I was screwing up really hard, you need to grow up, you need to get your stuff straight. And that hurt a lot. You know, as military guys, we don't like to talk about our feelings or emotions, stuff like that. We're pretty tough guys, but it's interesting when you look back on it. So I said, you know what, you're right, I got to do something about it. From that day he gave me that talk, I was in the YMCA every single day working out. I had changed my F's into A's. In 2001, when 9/11 struck, I was actually sitting in school. I saw those buildings get hit, and I knew exactly what my life's mission was at that point. I wanted to go serve my country. So that day I left school. I went to the recruiter. I wasn't old enough, so I had to tell my dad, hey, can you meet me at the recruiting station and help me sign in? And I joined, with aspirations of wanting to become a Navy SEAL. Now, just because I said I wanted to be a SEAL doesn't mean that I'm going to be one. It's a lot of effort. So I went through boot camp, I went through my A school, and then I went to SEAL training. When I showed up to SEAL training, I saw all these helmets on the grinder. The grinder is where we work out. There was over 100 of them there. And I looked at it and I said, wow, do I have what it takes? Does anybody know anything about SEAL training? Does everybody heard about Hell Week? Nobody's heard about Hell Week? Okay. Well, Hell Week is the toughest week that we actually have in our curriculum. In fact, they consider it the toughest week in military curriculum. It's a week straight where you're cold, wet, tired, miserable, sometimes bleeding. It's a butt kicker. It was our first day of Hell Week, 45 minutes into it. The instructors look at us. We're laying locked arms in the water, 60, 50-degree water, freezing. The instructor gets on the mic and says, "You've only been into Hell Week for 45 minutes. Do you really think you can keep this level of intensity up for 5 more days?" And I thought, did they just say that? You gotta be kidding me. But it's one special thing I learned about brotherhood right then and there. There was a buddy on my left and a buddy on my right, locked arms with me and weren't letting go of me. It was the first taste I actually had of being part of an elite team. Now, I wasn't a SEAL, but I certainly had aspirations of becoming one, and that really proved the point to me that I was going to be it because of that. Some guys would go. We started with 186. During SEAL training, we lost 60 guys the first night of Hell Week. We ended up graduating 22 overall. So it's a very small community. As a matter of fact, I think there's roughly 2,000 right now still currently serving. It is a very small community. It's a brotherhood. We went overseas. I was actually fortunate enough to make it through SEAL training and get attached to SEAL Team 7, Alpha Platoon. The one unique thing about going through Hell Week was I couldn't figure out what helped me get through it, but there was something I locked into. Like I said, I'm kind of an emotional guy. It was just hearing my mom cry. My mom, she cries when I sneeze, right? But just to hear her say, "You know what, Mom? I failed in the past, but I'm never going to fail again." Just to prove it to her. You know what? That's a big thing. So I made that phone call on Friday when I graduated Hell Week, and of course she, "Ryan, that's great." But it was emotional. It was everything for me. When I got attached to SEAL Team 7 Alpha Platoon, I became a new guy once again. It's a 2-year process to become a SEAL, and then you become a new guy all over again. It's pretty rough. But the grass is greener on that side. You're with some of the most elite commandos in the world, some of the hardest chargers. You really believe they don't have any fear. You'll find that they do. Everybody has fear, but they direct it towards what the mission is. We went overseas. My first deployment, 2005, Ramadi, Iraq. Pretty much the time that we started invading Ramadi. It was really hot out there, very dangerous. It's about 3 months into our deployment. We were driving down Route Michigan, and our Hummer hit an IED. It went low order, thank God, but it blew me straight out of the turret. That's why they call me Birdman, because I went for a flight. But to note, right then and there, when my body was instantly engulfed in flames, I thought, woe is me for 1 second until I looked back at the Hummer and saw that my buddies were trapped inside the Hummer. It was on fire. Something needed to happen. So I forgot my pain and went back to go see what was happening with them. Now, my buddy Monty actually sustained some very serious wounds. We helped him. We got him back 22 minutes from the time that we had gotten blown up to the time he was at the doctor's office getting fixed. Record time. It was great. Everybody made it through that. Everybody's alive and well today. But it's that teamwork, it's that bond, that brotherhood that kept us going. Everybody worked on their position and their job because of the guy next to him. That everybody was alive and still alive today. You don't really get that many places. And I know every single person in this room gets that where they serve. Each department you work, you have your brotherhood, your team. You will do anything you can to make sure they're safe, bring them back to their families. It's very special stuff. You know, in getting out of the service, it was hard for me because I defined myself as a Navy SEAL. Now, I couldn't tell most people, but at the same time, that's what I thought about myself. And so I got lost for a while. So I met some great guys. Some of them are sitting in this audience right now. Some firefighters out of Dallas. And I see their love and their passion for the job. I don't think I've ever seen it anywhere else. The Firefighters, you love your job, you love your community, your brotherhood, like nobody else. And it's so inspiring. And I know this because my grandfather was a firefighter in Detroit. 30 years he was a tillerman. And I always looked up to him. Matter of fact, I tried to wear his helmet all the time, and I would fight fake fires. So I understand what you all share. It's very, very important. Getting out of the service, when I met these Dallas firefighters, I said, you know, that's something I might want to do. Didn't know what it looked like, didn't know much about it really, but I just idolized them. About a year after I got out, I met a gentleman named Sam Brown. Sam Brown was an Army captain, graduated from West Point, Army Ranger. Went overseas on his first deployment and hit a roadside bomb as well. His body was instantly engulfed in flames. Only his bomb didn't go low order, it went high order. With that being said, he has debilitating scarring on his face and his arms, which many of you in the fire department have seen from brothers, friends, coworkers in the past. In meeting Sam, I have never seen a burn survivor in the military, really. I've seen little burns here and there, but full burns, full thickness, I hadn't seen it before. So I said, what are they doing for you guys today? And he said, Ryan, I've gone through over 30 surgeries now, and right here, as it stands right now, is as good as it gets. I couldn't believe it. Now, the doctors are trying really hard, but here's where I stand. So that night I went home and I did some research. I could not find much on the research and development for burns. So I said, you know what? We got to do something about it. We're doing it. So I called Sam the next day and I said, you know what? If we were to start something on your behalf to find out what cures there are for burns out there in this country, what's around the world, bring it to this country, and fix burns in real time, would you join me? He said I'd be honored. So I got every single person I knew in Dallas that befriended me, opened their arms up to me, were compassionate towards me, said this is the mission, this is what we're going after. We're going to fix burn survivors. Who's in? Everybody, hands up. So we started Sons of the Flag Burn Foundation 2012. Can you play that video for me?
I would walk 10 miles on my hands and knees. Ain't no doubt about it, baby, it's you I aim to please. I'm wrestled with a lion and the grizzly bear. It's my life, baby, but I don't care. Ain't that tough enough? Ain't that tough enough? All right, y'all. Ain't that tough enough? Ain't that tough enough? Oh, you baby, I would swim the sea. Nothing I do for you that's too tough for me. I put out a burning building with a shovel and dirt, and not even worry about getting hurt. Ain't that tough enough? Ain't that tough enough? Ain't that tough enough? Ain't that tough enough? I would work 24 hours, 7 days a week, just so I can come home and kiss your cheek. I love you in the morning, and I love you at noon. I love you in the night, and take you to the moon. Ain't that tough enough? Ain't that tough enough? Ain't that tough enough? Ain't that tough enough? Playing about the burning money that I've earned, and
So that video shows an event we did because we believe in so much what we're doing. Our mission at Sons of the Flag Burn Foundation is to rehabilitate burn survivors by the best means possible. Since our inception or our creation, we have teamed up with the leading doctors in the entire country, all the way from Brigham Women's Hospital in Boston with Harvard, to Brooke Army Medical Center, to Parkland Burn Unit in Dallas. All these doctors have been teaching us what they've been doing, the new clinical trials and research trials that are out there, and they're pushing them through FDA as we speak. We're helping in the funding to get these FDA trials approved and into the hands of the users so that you as firefighters, medics, military medics overseas can triage burn survivors in real time, but you have the golden hour to start triage before you start developing debilitating scarring. We can actually fix this. Since we've started, we've teamed up with the doctors that actually have these cures. So we're working hard to get the funding going for these doctors to push it through FDA. That run you saw us doing, we said we wanted to do everything the hardest we could. We wanted to prove to people that we mean business. We're not just running an organization, we are running the organization for research and development for burn technology. So with that being said, we went out and did a 100-mile run in 24 hours to raise $100,000 for what we're doing. And we accomplished that mission. We're going to accomplish every mission we go after because we know the horrific pain that goes behind a burn. I personally know it myself. And I truly believe in our mission. I'd like to introduce really quick our team that's actually here. Rob Weedman, you just saw him up on the TV. Some of you know who he is, New York Fire Rescue 2. Some of you don't, but he's one of our inspirations, and he's teaching a lot about what he's undergone through burn treatment through his injuries. Ladies and gentlemen, Rob Weedman. We've got our New York Task Force leader here, John Walters from New York Rescue 1. John? Our National Firefighter Director, Nathan Pilcher, Dallas Fire, Engine 33. Our Texas Task Force leader, Zane Crimpin, Engine 19. And one of our most trusted advisors, Mr. Steve Woods. These gentlemen, along with myself, are going to try to help out the burn community as much as possible. We're going after it. It's the most inspiring thing I've ever done since I've served. Now I want to tell you something special. This is something I truly believe in. My chief was one of the most inspirational people to me going through the SEAL teams and carrying myself through today. There's one special thing. People ask, how did you become a Navy SEAL? How do you do what you do? And I've never had words to answer that question. I don't know. I mean, I was young. I was 18, 19 years old when I went through SEAL training, so it was kind of, I don't understand what I'm getting myself into. So what does that look like? I can't tell you, but I can show you. Look at any firefighter. Look at any military guy, girl. Look at anybody who's ever done something in service for our country, coming out of a fire, coming out of a war zone. Look at their eyes. What makes this nation so great is looking into that warrior spirit. Because if you look into their eyes after the heat of battle, what's it going to tell you? It's going to say, I've been tested, I've proved I can do it, and I'm going to do it again because I believe in you and because you're my brother and you're my sister. That's what brotherhood's all about. That's what teammate. That's what we are as a country. The name Sons of the Flag was a poem written in World War I about the Revolutionary War. And it talks about the North and the South fighting. And at the end of the poem, it talks about the North and the South coming together as one. That's what we are. Everybody in here is in service to our country. We believe in the same mission. And it's that spark that keeps us going and moves us forward. I ask you all to look into what we're doing at Sons of the Flag. Take it into your hearts. Because it's an absolute need out there, and it directly affects every firefighter in this room. Our website is sonsoftheflag.org. How can you help? We're always looking for representation in every state. We're trying to grow this across the country to let every firefighter know that we're here and we're going to try to take care of you as best as possible. Donations. We are always going to be underfunded. That's just the strategy of a nonprofit, underfunding. So we're always going to be underfunded. And most importantly is spreading the awareness that there are men and women out there who are trying to help burn survivors, called Sons of the Flag Burn Foundation. I really appreciate your time. Thank you so much for having me. I'd love you guys to stop by our booth. I think we're at 2605. Come check us out, get a t-shirt, and hear some of the amazing stories that we've already received. Thank you so very much.
Thank you, Ryan, for that great speech. At this time, I'm just going to read the announcements again as we close at 10:30. The next educational sessions will begin, and also the exhibit floor will open. Tonight, the Brotherhood Bash, hosted by the Central Maryland Fools, Terry Farrell Foundation, Atlantic Emergency, and Firehouse Expo, 6:30 to 12 a.m. Free shuttle take you to and from the convention center right out front. Brotherhood Bash is a block party in Little Italy, with tents, gaming tables, music, and food and drinks. Tomorrow, 3 to 5 on the exhibit floor, hosted by Old Dominion. There'll be a tailgate on the show floor, hosted by Old Dominion, 10K, and Firehouse Expo. Beverages and light snacks served with no charge. This Saturday morning, the registration starts at 8:30 for the stair climb, benefiting the National Fallen Firefighters in the Hilton Hotel. And on Saturday, we're giving away the free Harley Davidson. You need to be in attendance on the show floor to win the bike. After the show floor closes, we'll direct everyone to the Inner Harbor for our Super Saturday event, water rescue demonstration by the Baltimore City Fire Department, band playing live music and food trucks. Unlimited beverages, wristbands are sold for $15 at our registration counter. Thank you very much, and the educational programs and exhibit floor will be open at 10:30. I'm Harvey Eisner, with one more reason to attend Firehouse Expo in Baltimore this year.
Hey! Firehouse Expo is having a free Harley Davidson giveaway. Yep, it's me again. And I tell you what, Harvey looks way too cool there on that bike. I'm not going to step on him for this one.
Everyone knows I like to let my hair down. And what better way to let your hair down than riding on a new 2013 Harley Davidson motorcycle. This year, one lucky attendee at Firehouse Expo will go home with a beautiful American-made motorcycle just for attending this year's show. Who else is giving you a free motorcycle as a thank you for all of your support? All you need to do is fill out an entry form at the Firehouse booth, but you do need to be there on Saturday afternoon for the drawing to win. For complete rules and regulations, go to the Firehouse Expo website. Just one more reason you don't want to miss this year's Firehouse Expo. More tradition, more education, and more fun.